Welcome back to the Amazon's podcast, the second hour, and so glad to be joined once again by IFBB Women's Bodybuilder Pro Olympian Sheena Ohlig. Sheena, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Glenn.
It's always good to see you. You just competed at the Toronto, so we'll jump right into it. What's next? What show is Sheena Ohlig doing?
We're going to keep our foot down on that gas pedal. We're going to head right into Atlanta.
That's what I'm talking about. And when you look at it, it's kind of like the Triple Crown of horse racing. You got Chicago, Tampa, and Atlanta, much
That's
like
right.
the Preakness and whatnot, the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont, if you will.
That's
so,
right.
what made you choose?
When you're already close. I think that it's important that you do everything that you can. As competitors, I think that we have to, be strategic and do everything that we can to give ourselves the best opportunity and the best shot at getting that Olympia qualification. And I got the feedback that I needed. Me and my coach, we went back, we reassessed things. We knew that we weren't going to be, spot on with conditioning for Toronto, but we knew that we could still go in and make an impact. So we got a lot of great data from the show and from that peak, and I think it'll give us give us an opportunity to get ahead of the curve going into Atlanta and hit the nail on the head.
What was the specific feedback that they gave you?
Conditioning for sure. Bring out the detail, come in a little drier. I think that the one thing that I had going for me was my athletic stature. My lines, which I always get complimented for and great feedback on. But that doesn't do much good if you can't really display them and really bring out the detail and show all of the specificity in the shape. So that's definitely been my focus these last 3 weeks headed into Atlanta.
How do you feel?
I feel great. I feel hungry. I feel tired. But that's typically a good sign, and I think that's how you know that you're doing what you need to do to get there. So, you kind of just keep the foot down on the gas pedal, keep trudging away, and slowly but surely ticking away at it. I think chipping away at it and just doing everything that you can, one day at a time is the only solution.
How long you been in prep now?
We did 11 weeks. Honestly, it was I'll say 12, but I wasn't really able to hit it hard, but for between 9 and 10 weeks out. So that's why we knew we weren't going to be spot on, because typically my body really needs a good 12 weeks, a solid 12. And that's right around where we are now, 12, 15 with, these last 3 weeks, tacked on. And that's good for my body. And I think that if we do well at Atlanta, it'll give us an opportunity to dial back a little bit, rest a little bit, and then, hit the ground running going into Phoenix, the Rising Phoenix and the Olympia.
When you look at it, I count roughly 7 shows: Chicago, Tampa, Portugal, Romania, Atlanta, Anaheim, and the Rising Phoenix. And then I got to looking at the list from last year, and it now becomes a story of not so much as who's on the outside looking in. Because I look at Rashana Boswell, Michaela Aycock, Shara Priami, she's doing Portugal, Mayla Ash, Natalia Kovaleva, and Christina Mendoza. So those were on the list last year. And one thing that on Olympia TV, Linda Murray said, this list will look totally different this year. And no doubt, I think that it is. What do you feel about it overall? Obviously, you're going to qualify for the Olympia. I believe you will. But there's still some heavy hitters out there. And everybody was seeing it was on the list last year. Like, okay, where they at?
That's right. And I think that's a testament to why it's so important to have more opportunities for the women to compete. And I think, when you have 10 shows on the schedule, it's twofold. It's one, as competitors, we have to get out there earlier in the season. But also as promoters, they have to put more shows out there in order to attract the bigger names and, the more popular names, and, the people that are going to, the girls, the women, the competitors that are going to bring that draw, to really bring the audience. And I think that with such big names still out there, these shows are just going to be stacked. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be great to watch. I think it's going to be amazing to compete in. I think that it's going to push every competitor out there. And, unfortunately, with only 7 shows left, and you counted it, it was like 11 names out there,
Yeah.
still off the list. That doesn't leave a spot for every girl on that list. So,
No.
there are going to be some people who get chapped out. And, I think that it's just one of those things where it's like a changing of, a turning of the tide, and it's going to bring new faces onto the stage. Like, for instance, what's her name? Mules, I think she goes by
Yep.
on Instagram.
Julia
She
Wetzel.
Yes, she had a great showing last year.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it was her pro debut last year, and now she's qualified for the Olympia. Right?
Yeah.
We had Ava, now she's qualified for the Olympia. So those are 2 spots right there that are
Ava
bringing.
Mello. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Ashley Jones, right?
Yep.
He's on there. So these are 3 brand new faces that are changing the geography of the Miss Olympia stage, and I think it's fun. I think it's exciting. And I think to all of my veteran competitors out there, I'm excited to see them jump into these shows. I'm positive there are going to be some girls that are coming to Atlanta. Hopefully, we get some
Yeah.
of those girls that are going to be coming to Atlanta. So, we're going to be backstage, doing what we have to do to show up, to show up big, and, to bring that heat. I think Portugal, I think Spain is going to be amazing. I think
Mm-hmm.
Tampa and Chicago are always fire. So those are
Yeah.
going to be some shows that we're definitely watching out for. And then, we still have Rising Phoenix, what I mean?
Yeah.
Obviously, like, that is a world championship title. That is like, the Arnold for women's bodybuilding. And, those are where the most highest decorated competitors are going to be. So, I mean, we still have plenty of opportunity, but it's not a lot of shows. So, I'm just crossing my fingers and sending, good juju out to all my sisters and all the girls that I've competed with. And, we're about to make it a fun year.
Yeah, definitely. But there can only be so many. And then
Yeah,
and there can only be one in the end. Because
that's right.
everybody's going after the champion, Andrea Shaw. So,
That's right.
and I love how people just automatically discount the Rising Phoenix. Say, well, Andrea's going to win that, but it's all going to shake out on the stage. It really is.
You know
And
what? And it's not who shows up on that day. It's any
exactly.
woman's race on that day. And I think we have some amazing competitors who are going to bring it. I think people have made massive improvements, myself being one of them. I stay hungry. I don't know
Yeah.
about anybody else, but when it comes to training, when it comes to competing, like, I'm a dog, right? And it's like, I
Hmm.
want to fight, I want to scrap, I want to scrape. And I've learned a lot over the last couple of years, and I've been through a lot over the last couple of years, and I think this is going to be a special year, so I'm excited.
With the loss of points and winning you're in, I definitely see that the competition is picked up. And I
Hmm.
think that's a good thing from that perspective. But still, the caveat would be to have more shows, more chances to qualify, because not everybody's ready to qualify in April.
That's
Um,
right.
and that just is what it is. It takes you guys longer to get ready. 16 to 25 weeks, however much it takes. It takes what it takes. And
Hmm.
so, if you scale out more shows, definitely would like to see more added. But if you could pick a geographical location, where would you add a show? Because you're on the East Coast. I would love to see more East Coast shows. Obviously,
I would
when
love
you
to see those shows. We used to have a show here in Atlantic City, in New Jersey. So I would
uh huh,
love to see an Atlantic City pro. I would love to see a show back in New Jersey. I think that would be amazing. Even in DC, I think that there's plenty
yeah,
of tri-state, areas that will be a big draw, to a lot of competitors that are easy to get to. Transportation is so much easier up here on the East Coast. I think,
yeah,
just for sake of, uh, points of interest, there's so many places. We have so many like convention centers and places that would be amazing to host a show. So I could definitely see something like that. I would even go so far as to say like Boston or Connecticut, you know, something up there in
That's
the,
different. Yeah, in
you
Boston
know,
area. And then it's like, what would be your time of year? I mean, do you do it earlier in the season or do it in
definitely.
the summer?
Listen, we literally have only had almost one show a month since April. It's like April, May, June, July, right? We could
True. Yeah.
easily add four more shows just by adding one more each of those months, right? Even if you
Yeah.
kept it early in April, you could still add another April show, still add another May show, still add another June, another July. And right there, you would pick up four. And honestly, you would make even the Miss Olympia that much more entertaining by giving it, 15, 16 girls, And I think,
Right.
to be honest, my true take on the Olympia is that I don't believe that an Olympia title needs to be, fought out between 30, 40 people. I
No.
think it's one of the most exclusive titles there is. So 15, 16, maybe max 20,
Right.
to duke it out. I think that is what makes it exciting. And that's what makes it so revered. But when you have 30, 40, 50, individuals, because you have 30, 40, 50 shows, not knocking
Hmm.
any of the other divisions, but to be honest, I feel like you water it down, you make the show long, you put people in a position where you're stuck trying to strategize, the hours of the day on, the show. I know that there was some controversy with how it affected the schedule in the last previous years. And I think,
Hmm.
yes, it's a money sake for the promoters, but I think that for the sake of the title and for the sake of the legacy, increase women's bodybuilding shows. Give us four more shows. It's not like we're asking for 20 more shows. Give
Right.
us, four more shows, five more shows. I mean, this year we had 10 shows. Four of those shows are international, or three,
Yes. And
three or
not
four.
everybody can get overseas, and vice versa. Not everybody overseas can come over here. They may win a show, but it may have visa problems.
Exactly. So, I think that there's definitely a lot that could be done to sort of even the playing field and just give
Hmm.
us more opportunity to really be able to show up and to make it, to create that draw or to increase that
Hmm.
draw. So, I'd be interested to see how this, how the officials and the leaders that be, right, the decision makers up top, how they, respond to what this year looks like.
Right. And when you look at the geographical locations that you listed, those are great areas. But then you look at the shows that were lost, the Puerto Rico Pro and the Savannah Pro,
Right.
even if you brought those back, So I don't know what it's going to take, but I hope it's going to be a conversation that the promoters and women's bodybuilding and all the powers that be can have at the end of the year to be like, okay, look, we can't start our season to this date because it's just too early, it takes more time. And then at the
Hmm.
same time, the number of shows, the right number is probably 12 to 14, which is probably what you're going to end up in the Olympia this year. Probably on the high end, 14, 15 competitors. On the
Right.
low end, 12. And it just depends on how everybody's doing. Because it's not hard to figure out, what shows women's bodybuilders are doing because there's only 7 left.
That's right.
So that's just the way it is. Those would be great changes. Um, no doubt. And hopefully everything's going to materialize after this year. I don't want to hold you too long, but I do want to give you this question before you get out of here. If Sheena Ohlig, for some reason, does not make the Olympia, what would this mean? Would this mean that this season was a failure? Or does that just mean that you just come back that stronger in 2025? Because at this point, this will be your second show of the season.
This will be the second.
Second show of the season. Do you have a
Mhm.
pitch count as well as to how many you'll do and how you feeling? Because on the one hand, I feel like you're just warming up and you're just getting started. While
Yeah,
everybody else is already peaked, you're still climbing. Give me your
I
thoughts.
like that. I think there's definitely a lot of potential ahead. I think should I, not get that Olympia qualification, it definitely would not be a failure this year. By far, would be a success still. Just because of the improvements that we made, the progress that we made, the things that we learned about my body.
Mm-hmm.
Just the knowledge and even the connections that I made for sure. I just don't look at things that way. I'm definitely a glass half full kind of girl, so
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be a failure. I would tip my hat to all the competitors for sure. I would still root for all of my sisters in iron for sure. But I do definitely have a sort of, a max number of shows. I'm definitely more mindful about my body,
Right.
about my physical, just the physical wellness of it all, mental, emotional health, all of that. And I know what I value most. Like, I definitely want to start a family soon. I definitely want to start moving into, more of the sustainable sort of, you know, footmark or foothold that I want to have in the league, in the industry. I
Right.
definitely build out my podcast. I'm not saying, hats being hung up or the bikini's going to be hung up for sure this year. I
Right.
think take it show by show. I don't want to make any, dead set sort of like this is it sort of promises or predictions, to be honest, because there's still so much of the year left. But I'm enjoying the prep. I'm enjoying my life. I'm enjoying my family. I'm enjoying my friends. I'm enjoying my partner. I'm enjoying like all the things that come with sort of just like evolving as we age and as we just make it through this thing called life. So we're gonna take it one show at a time and see what happens. I have a inkling though, a big hunch that I'll be on that Olympia stage. So
Yeah, I got a feeling that yeah, Sheena Ohlig's gonna be there in Vegas. And one other thing, when you look at the number of shows, the time of year for the Olympia, because it's
mhm,
been as late as November, October this year, but it was usually always in September. And when
that's
you
right.
measure that into the number of shows, what's the right time? And I think from an athlete's perspective, I want to hear, what do you guys think? This is
Mhm,
how many shows we should have. This is when the
mhm.
Olympia should be, and I'll let you out of here.
I mean, I think that it definitely requires a little bit more thought, but just shooting from the hip, like off the top of my head, I actually agree with it being more in that fall time, that September, October month, just because
Mm-hmm.
it does give the athletes a month or two left in that year to sort of dial things back, reverse properly out of their diet or out of their prep, and then start their off season fresh. And even if a show was in April, that gives them, 4 months, which is 16 weeks
Right.
to prep into a show if they're not really having to make significant changes and gains and improvements. Like we're talking about an athlete that is there in terms of size, in terms of shape, and really it's just like a conditioning and refining type athlete. Um, when you have an athlete that still has to put on size and still has to put on tissue and still has to develop their weak areas, I think they're the athletes that are probably going to be hurt the most with the lack of shows because they'll probably wind up having to take a whole year off to make those significant changes because you don't have so much time and you don't have a lot of shows. So ideally, I would say definitely put the Olympia September, October, and then that gives us November, December to sort of reverse, come out of the year, still with those 2 months in that year, which that's significant. 8 weeks is actually a lot of time in prep time when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
reversing, because then now you can start the new year fresh. And if you want to do one of the earlier shows, let's just say April, for instance, you still have that 16-week
Triple O Dynasty. Yeah.
yeah, so
For
even if it's like
example.
April, May, you still have 16 weeks to prep and get yourself in there, considering, hopefully you didn't get too over fat, over the holidays.
Yeah.
Um, hopefully you reverse properly and you set yourself up for success. But I think that would be great. And then if you're doing 2 to 3, if there's, I'm not going to say if an athlete is doing 2 shows a month, but if there are at least 2 shows a month for the athletes to consider from May through August, May, June,
Right.
July, that's 8 shows, which typically there's a show or two in multiple states for all of these other divisions. There's like one or
Right.
two shows a week, right? Every week
Exactly.
shows in multiple states. So some of these divisions have 3, 6, they have 2, 4, 6, 8 shows to
Yep.
choose from, in a month, right?
Yeah.
So it's like wild to me that we only are looking at one or two for the month total across, total across the schedule. So I think if we could get 12 shows, 15 shows would be amazing, because then if
Right.
there's just one winner, you got 15 competitors. If there's
Exactly. You know that going
if
off. Yeah.
there's a winner that goes on to do a couple shows and takes that spot, at minimum 10, 12 girls, I think that's still a competitive Olympia.
Yeah. Because it's all about the best in the world, and you're right. But you look, you got 7 shows. Well, we know there's already 7 or 8 that are in. There's only 7 more going,
That's
so that's
it.
14. So
That's
let's
it.
move on. So
I would love to see 20 competitors. I would love to
yeah,
see 20 competitors. I would love to see, 20 to 22 shows. If we're looking at 3 shows, 4 shows a month, in even across a couple of states. Maybe there's a show in New York, but there's also a show in California, right? Then that gives the girls that are
yeah,
on the West Coast or on the west side of the country, time to go over there. They're the girls on the east side. It gives us more of an opportunity to not have to travel across country, to have to travel up to Canada, travel
yeah,
down out, just going overseas, taking these drastic trips. And I think that if you're able to do that and the promoters are willing to put our shows on their schedules, you might not have 10 or 20 women showing up to compete at your show, but Toronto, we had 7, 10, and I think that was a good show. And I think it went
hmm
fast. I think it was efficient. I think they did a phenomenal job facilitating it. And it was just, it was a very fluid show, and it wasn't overwhelming for the competitors or for the promoters. So I think if you can approach it like that, it makes the most sense.
definitely. I love all your ideas. Love your entrepreneurial spirit, because you are running businesses as well. So hopefully that continues to take off. Love your marketing. You got a heavy upside. You definitely in the know. You definitely would be ideally an athlete's rep, but
There you
you're
go.
not going to be retired no time soon. So that's what's
No.
great about it. I mean, I
Listen, I
can't.
think as competitors, we're always going to be bodybuilders, right? Like, I don't think
Yeah,
you ever retire from being a bodybuilder. You may retire from competing, but I think I'm just always going to be a part of the industry, and I'm looking forward to it.
yeah. And you're a seasoned veteran, but you're not an OG. You know, I don't know where I would rate you. I mean, maybe, but you're not over the hill. Thanks for coming on, Sheena Ohlig. Really appreciate you. She's doing the
Thank you.
Atlanta Pro, and I'll be there as Amazon's fitness magazine. So be there to see it firsthand. All the best to you. Be talking soon. Thanks for coming on. I know you got a lot to do because you're in prep. So I really appreciate you. So gracious for your time.
Thanks so much, Glenn. Thanks so much for
All
having
right.
me on. Talk to you soon.
All right. Talk soon. Bye bye. Sheena Ohlig. She's doing the Atlanta Pros. You seen it? So gracious for her to come on. So we're gonna jump over and check out Tracy Gow, and hope we can still get her on tonight on the Amazon's podcast. The Amazon's podcast, of course, is brought to you by Maximus Posing Suits. Let your inner warrior shine. Custom-made competition suits for victory on every stage. And of course, Murder Weight Apparel. You're not just wearing a clothing brand, you're wearing a mindset. So we will talk to you guys very soon.